Okay, meet Tony, my Thai Constellation Monstera Deliciosa. He's big, he's dramatic, and definitely in charge of the corner he's claimed in my living room. Whether you're just starting out or you've had your Monstera long enough to give it a name too, today we're diving into how to actually keep this plant alive and healthy. This is a care guide for Monstera Deliciosa, and if you're looking for the wild backstory on how this became a social media icon, I've got a History of Plants episode all about that. But first, let's make sure yours has what it needs to thrive. Let's start with the basics. Monstera Deliciosa is native to the tropical rainforests of Central America. It's a climbing plant, which means it doesn't just sit there politely. It wants to explore. In the wild, it grows upward along trees using its aerial roots, which look like this, to anchor and explore. Now, these roots aren't just for decoration, because in the wild, the plant will use them to pull moisture and nutrients straight from humid air and surrounding moss. Indoors, they'll wrap around anything they can grab, walls, poles, even nearby furniture if you're not careful. And if you've got multiple plants nearby, learn from my experience and watch those roots, because I've had Tony's aerial roots find their way into potted plants in front and to the side of them, like they were trying to start a colony. And it is really difficult to yank them out. And that climbing behavior is why your Monstera needs some kind of support, like a moss pole, trellis, whatever you've got. Without one, they can't really stretch out the way it wants to, and you'll end up with a leggy mess instead of a leafy showpiece. Let me set Tony down because he's super heavy. Monstera Deliciosa needs bright, indirect light. Think near a window with filtered sunlight and not baking indirect sun, because too much sun can scorch their leaves, while too little causes it to stretch and lose its fenestrations, which are those holes and splits that everyone's obsessed with. If your Monstera isn't getting enough light, consider adding a grow light, especially in winter. In terms of watering, your best bet is to allow the top 1 to 2 inches of soil to dry out between watering. Usually that's every 7 to 10 days, but always check the soil first. And I know you're awesome and you probably already use a pot with drainage holes, but it's worth repeating. If your Monstera sits in soggy soil, root rot will come for it, almost guaranteed. Use a chunky, well-draining mix. I really like 3 parts big box plant soil, 2 parts bark, 1 part perlite or pumice. Keep the pH between 6 to 8, nothing too acidic. And yes, they actually like being a little root bound. You can keep them in the same pot for years with just the occasional top dressing. Now, in terms of temperature, aim for 65 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, 18 to 29 degrees Celsius. Below 50, you're in trouble. Avoid cold drafts and vents, especially in winter. However, I will say, Tony has lived in front of a window that has a floor vent that hits it. And it's sort of just like the best of a bad situation, but he's been doing okay with it. So use your best judgment. Humidity-wise, Monstera wants at least 60%. If your home is really dry, expect crispy leaf tips. Use a humidifier, group plants together, or mist the moss pole to help. Now, I know the popular recommendation is pebble trays, sitting a potted plant on a tray with pebbles, watering the pebbles, and putting water in the tray. That's one I go back and forth on because recent research shows it can actually help, but only if set up properly. The water has to sit just below the pebbles, and the plant needs to be close enough to benefit. So you can try it, but I would say either start with humidifier or group plants together first to create that microclimate. I think that my experience, that is way more beneficial. Also, if you're cranking up the humidity, make sure there's airflow to prevent mold. I have a Monstera albo in this guy, and this would be a problem if I didn't have fans running 24/7 in it. Make sure there's some way to keep that moisture going because stagnant equals mold. Now, during spring through early fall, feed every 2 to 4 weeks with a balanced liquid fertilizer at half the strength. And always fertilize moist soil, not dry, because then it'll just run through and you've wasted both fertilizer, money, and effort. Skip the fertilizer in the winter because the plant's basically taking a nap, so throwing nutrients at it won't do much. Slow release fertilizers are fine too, just watch nitrogen levels. Too much nitrogen makes floppy leaves and no structure. Organic options like worm castings or seaweed-based mixes are gentler and really good long-term. Now, for those interested in semi-hydroponics, can you grow Monsteras in semi-hydro? Yes, if you know what you're doing. Overall, Monsteras are pretty hardy plants, you might have noticed, but a semi-hydroponic setup gets a little... Case in point, I've got a mint Monstera. that I have been growing from tissue culture, and it is growing in a semi-hydroponic mix. To be totally honest, this is a pretty expensive gamble. I've got ADHD, so it is way easier for me to stay on top of watering in a self-watering system like this. However, there is a chance this could go tits up. If you want to try semi-hydro, use leca, pon, or pumice. Feed with hydro-friendly nutrients, flush regularly to remove any salt buildup, and monitor water levels closely. Basically, treat it like an experiment, because it kind of is. My best recommendation is to start with a cutting before converting your main plant. Trust me. Monstera propagation, though, is really easy. It's typically best done in the spring or summer when the plant is actively growing. To do it, you're going to want to cut below a node, which is a part where the leaves break off. So this would be a node right here. So I would want to cut down here. And ideally, your node should have an aerial root just to give it the best chance possible. Place it in water, soil, or moss. Once the roots are a few inches long, you can pot it up. And don't forget, no node, no roots. No roots, no plant. No plant, just disappointment. All right, now let's talk about common problems people have. First, yellowing leaves. That's probably overwatering. Check your roots. If they're mushy, trim them off and repot in fresh soil. If they're fine, water it less. No fenestrations on the new leaves. This is either not a problem or a problem. It could be low light or that it's just too young. New leaves or new plants don't fenestrate until they're able to be comfortable enough to know that they can give up that photosynthesis real estate. Regardless, though, of how old your plant is or how new the leaves are, more light usually helps. If the edges get brown and crispy, there's two reasons that could be happening. The easiest is humidity, probably too low. It's like humans with hypothermia when we just start focusing on conserving the essential systems, and that's why people get frostbite, things like that. Same thing is happening with the plant. It's letting go of the ends to conserve moisture on the critical systems. The other thing it could be is too much fertilizer. This is sort of the opposite, where it is pushing out all of the excess to the very ends of the plant so that it doesn't have to deal with it. The easiest way to fix that is flush the soil or repot it in fresh soil. If leaves are drooping or curling, it could be too much or too little water, so check the soil. If you've got black spots or leaf drop, that is a very big sign of cold damage, so move it away from windows and drafts. If you've got aerial roots growing wild, that is totally normal. In nature, they latch onto trees to help the plant climb. Indoors, they'll settle for whatever you got. A pole, your furniture, textured wall. It's going to do what it's going to do. You can trim them if you want, or just tuck them away. They're not weeds and they're not bad. They're just doing what the Monstera has evolved to do. That's how to keep your Monstera Deliciosa happy and healthy. If you want to know the weird history behind how this plant went from climbing trees in the rainforest to becoming an Instagram icon, check out the History of Plants episode I did on it. It's already up and waiting for you.